Congress is certainly more polarized in terms of partisanship than it's been in quite some time. Easily rising polarization over the last 20, 30 years. We have an extra dose of division in this particular Congress, given that there's a Democratic House and a Republican-controlled Senate, which is relatively rare, about a third of the time in the post-war period. So things are particularly divided in today's Congress, especially with a pretty controversial president as well down the avenue. We use those terms a little bit too loosely, but what we have in mind is that the parties are increasingly, Democrats and Republicans, taking opposite positions on issues. Sometimes because they're ideologically polarized. Let's say they disagree about how much governmental regulation there should be of the environment. But also sometimes they disagree just because they're partisan team play. Your team's for it, so my team's against it. And it's really hard to disentangle that ideological disagreement from that just sort of sheer partisanship. Famous for political scientists named David Mayhew in the 1970s said that members are single-minded seekers of re-election, by which he meant that they may have other goals. And we think they do have goals, policy goals, power goals, other office, and so forth. But you can't really successfully pursue any of those other goals if you don't first get reelected and then reelected over time. So we think members have multiple goals. They vary, but no one can successfully pursue a career if they can't secure reelection. Well, there's probably some contribution of redistricting in terms of the safety of Democratic and Republican seats. However, if we looked at polarization and partisanship in the Senate, where we don't have redistricting every 10 years, we see rising polarization in lockstep with House polarization. So we need to be a little careful thinking that redistricting is the real culprit in driving these parties into their trenches. Nothing is forever, probably. We've seen variation over time, historically, in how polarized the parties are. But more often than not, we've had pretty competitive polarized parties. And so it's a little hard from today's vantage point to know really what would break the fever here between the parties.